Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday night around 9:30 on a cold and rainy night. Obviously, I haven't been coming on as regularly as I had been for about a 3-week span. I go through like ebbs and flows when it comes to being super creative and active with this stuff. And then I reach some points where I kind of put everything out there and give it some time for people to hopefully catch up if they are watching me and interested in what I have to say. I know it can be a lot. I was doing extremely long videos every day, plus all the other content. So I figured I would slow down the pace a little bit for the last week and a half. Just kind of refresh my own brain and reflect on where everything stands at the current moment, and really, instead of creating and writing and doing the videos, it's been more of a rest and research time. So yeah, it's just a natural order of things for me. I've always gone through periods of extreme production, spend a lot of time by myself, just whether it's building a business or working on a project, a lot of time by myself using my experiences and things I've learned to create. And then in the past, when I wasn't in those periods, I would typically find myself going out into the world more and forming new experiences and talking to people. And that process would usually plant fresh ideas and seeds in my head, which would later become the things that I would incorporate into my work. Kind of like having a muse or inspiration that I take from people to lead me down the path of what I want to work on. But obviously, I haven't really been doing too much active with other people because, one, nobody seems to really want to interact with me, which is fine. I'm fine on my own. I don't need to force myself upon anybody. I would love to find a group where we were on similar wavelengths, operating at the same frequency, and could have discussions about things that actually matter to me. But the reality of the situation right now is that, that group of people doesn't exist right now. So, and instead of pretending that all the small talk and things that people typically want to discuss, or doing the things that I used to kill time doing, going out drinking and partying and things like that, just don't interest me anymore. So I have to find inspiration through other ways, which really it's just been digging deeper into some of these topics that like I said, I don't do extensive research on this stuff. The majority of it, at some point throughout my life or when I was working on something else, I learned some of these facts or made some of these observations, and they just pop back into my head based on my current situation or what's going on in my life. But there has been a lot of things over the last couple of weeks that I just didn't particularly see coming. And some of them were just outside of my knowledge base. Like, I really have never gone on any deep dives with the occult or secret organizations, like secret societies. I really never did too much of the way of like the Freemasons or anything like that. So I've been watching some documentaries and doing some research on that stuff just to see if some of the things I was talking about, if they actually held up. You know, like I said, I a lot of times just connect dots and go off of feeling. But yeah, it turns out I came across a podcast with a guy being interviewed. It was about a 4-hour podcast 2 nights ago. And he dove into, it was actually eerie how many of the things that I had discussed over the last 3 weeks, and this was like a new podcast, so it wasn't like I was influenced by any of the things that this guy said. I never even heard of the guy or the podcast. It just showed up on my feed. But like I said, it was 4 hours long, talking about intelligence agencies, Epstein. He went into Charles Manson and CIA, and really started talking about Aleister Crowley and like the whole black magic stuff and just a variety of other things that is directly in line with everything that I've been talking about. And this guy, very much, I respected the fact that he was obviously, I mean, he's written many books and has his own podcast, and obviously he's spent years and years studying this stuff. But he did the exact same thing that I was doing throughout my entire process, which is just stating factual things that we can verify has gone on and has happened, connect people with people and organizations with organizations. And he talked about the Bohemian Club, which, you know, I talked about the Bohemian Groves. He talked about Skull and Bones, about Freemasonry. And I also dove deeper into Freemasonry on a few other things that I watched. some ex-members, and I'm not going to dive into that stuff tonight. I will have, however, be talking about that stuff soon. I have a long list of things, thoughts, and things that I want to discuss, but instead of doing it more the long form, like having 2-hour videos that I know most people probably won't sit through and watch the entire thing, I'm going to try to do things a little bit different, and split up the subjects. Even if I end up talking about a lot of this stuff tonight, I will break the videos down into shorter segments, which, you know, they'll weave into each other, like carry over, but you don't necessarily have to watch one before going to the next. That way I can include what I talk about in each one and try to keep them definitely under an hour, hopefully maybe like 30 to 40 minutes. So if you see some stuff in one video in the description that is of more interest to you, you can watch that one without having to try to find where I talk about it within like a 2-hour video. So, you know, I've talked about before about trial and error, how I will always try to switch things up. I don't ever want to get too comfortable. Yeah, it's, you know, I have as much faith today that I've had throughout this entire process. There is definitely frustration that comes at times, but I don't let it linger, because I know, like, I still have to control what I can control, and it's very tricky when you're talking about my story, because there's just so many moving parts, and I've talked openly about not being able to trust people, because anybody that I have trusted ended up not working towards helping me, but rather use these things against me to actually put me in a worse position. So I am, you know, obviously still have my faith and being guided by spirit and believe in divine timing and everything, but like, I know the result still. I know where this is going to go. I know I will eventually get justice and expose what is something that's very real that's going on in my life. But I do have to remember that I am dealing with other people, a lot of other people who are working in opposition to that result happening. So that's a huge group of people throughout government and family and friends, and they have the power and the money and the resources, and they've done this before, so they know how the game works. But what I can control is to not give up, to not stop talking about this stuff, because as many corrupt people out there who don't take their positions or jobs seriously, for as many people who just follow and don't think for themselves, and for me, I'm in the position that I'm in. Like, I know who I am. I know my story. I know all of the lies that have been told about me. I know what is right and what is not right, and how many bizarre, weird things just don't add up to me. But obviously, I'm going to be the most invested in my own story because it's affecting me and my daughter. And I'm doing it for other people. But, I get that it's very easy for us to ignore other people's struggles or their stories. It's hard to insert yourself in something that, let's be honest, it'll be a lot easier not to. Like, I get that. And a lot of people are still just very much in the program. They're programmed to think and see things and believe certain things are clear cut and are the way that they are. So whenever I do get frustrated about what's going on, have I not even heard anything about this, everybody just acts as if I'm not even doing the stuff that I'm doing. They just pretend none of this ever happened. I guess a tactic to, one, not draw attention to themselves, but two, trying to wait me out for me to give up or for me to eventually lose my temper and go on a rant so that they can then point at that and say, see, we told you he has anger issues, that he can't control his emotions. So, yeah, I'm as committed as ever. I 100% stand by everything I've said so far. And like I said, haven't collected a dime or made any money off of this. I haven't had anybody prove anything that I've said to be false in any way. People have just pretended I don't exist, which is nothing new. Story of my life. But all it takes is that one. Like, I obviously know not being able to go to the police or to the courts or get a lawyer that's going to give me a fair chance just because it's right. Like, I'm not naive to believe that just me going up in front of the court and telling my testimony and having 20 people all collaborate to tell the same story against me, like, that's never going to go in my favor. So from the start, I said I was just going to show people who I am and prove to people that I'm not the things that they've said that I was. I wasn't lazy or abusive, or I'm definitely not disloyal. I'm probably the most loyal person there is. If you actually go down my track record of who I stayed loyal to and the things that they've done to me. But yeah, whether it's something I say that just irritates people in a certain way, or, you know, they can't get over the fact that I don't do things in the traditional fashion, whatever it may be, I think there's just a lot of people who still have some sort of bias against me. Then there's a lot of people that are complicit because they were involved in one way or another. A lot of people, you know, treated me a certain way and formed opinions about me not knowing the extent of what was going on. And that's something that's, I think it's for a lot of people easier to just like pretend didn't happen and just try not to think about it. I think that's with most of this stuff, is most people just try to avoid it and don't want to actually think about the stuff I talk about, or just dismiss it as too bizarre to be true. But like I said, instead of getting frustrated and losing patience, I just take a break when I need to, recharge my batteries, keep researching, keep fighting my own battle until that one or two other people happen to wake up or see something that I post that contradicts something that they've been told. Somebody in power or authority that is of the light and is a believer in truth, who's willing to step up and do the right thing. I don't need the majority to side with me. I just need a select couple individuals that have actual influence and power and morals to investigate, because I know the claims that I'm making have truth to them. I've talked about it, like I said, most people don't care, so I'm not gonna flood my Facebook with text and receipts for all this stuff. But I wouldn't claim to have them if I didn't. Like every once in a while I'll throw something on there just to show like absolutely what I said happened, and I can show you exactly when. I know at some point there will be an investigation, whether that's currently going on or if that happens in the future. I don't know. I'm in the dark with when it comes to that stuff. I've kind of, at this point, chalked up anybody who I considered a friend or a supporter or even an acquaintance who I thought would be on my side and stick up for me. I kind of just don't have any expectations for that, just based on the reaction of everybody. Like, I see all the people who watch the videos and look at the artwork, and nobody actually wants to learn more or try to figure out like if anything I'm saying has any truth to it. But yeah, there's gonna be there's too many people involved. They did way too much. So as long as it takes, I'm going to keep going back to the drawing board and coming back with fresh ideas and different ways of continuing to tell my story. I'm sure some people are sick of hearing about what I have to say, but as always, those people do not have to listen or watch me. So I don't know what you're getting worked up about. Like, there's plenty of people who annoy me when I watch their stuff. So ultimately, I just don't watch it. Like, I try to get opinions on both sides of things and get people's takes. But there comes a point that certain people are just not for me. I recognize that, and I don't put myself through it. To me, that's a healthy way of handling that. So, yeah, for anybody who has a problem with me talking, just stop watching. Pretty simple. But yeah, people are gonna do what they do. They can't help themselves. That's part of why we're here. It's that impulse to do things that are destructive against yourself. A lot of the choices people made against me, they thought they were going to be destructive towards me, but they only strengthened me. Ultimately, it just will end up being their own self-destruction. But all those people are still going to be going around putting on their act, pretending everything's okay, while I have to sit here and still fight. But when it's all over, the pendulum will swing. Things will look very different for both sides. I'm not going to continue to pretend that I'm okay with things that have happened. So I made plenty of mistakes throughout the process that I've reflected on and I'm totally at peace with. The funny part is, like, the more hard I was on myself in the beginning and really like psychoanalyzing myself, and I ended up realizing that so much of the stuff, yeah, I could always handle things better, but at the end of the day, my intentions were always good. And it was other people's bad intentions and greed and things that, like, if I saw the worst in people, I would have been more guarded. I would have been more careful. But I generally see the best in people and want to believe that if you treat somebody good, in return, they will treat you good. Now, that has not been my experience. I can say that. But I've realized that I've only been in a very isolated world that I thought was a representation of a much bigger world. I didn't realize that all the people that I was surrounded by were operating from these same places, and how, like magnets, they all attracted to me because I was the gullible one who they could take advantage of. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I've learned it, and I've changed that. But I don't look in the mirror and beat myself up for being the way that I've always been, for trying to make everybody happy and stuff like. That's just naturally how I was. And until I learned a lot of stuff about what was healthy, and I was willing to really analyze myself and why I believed certain things, and I realized it was conditioning and programming, and not from one person, but from everyone surrounding me, and on a bigger scale, the world we live in. Like, I bought in to the ideal version of the way things were supposed to be, not realizing just how far away from that we actually existed. There's one of the documentary that I watched, I found very interesting one section. As I said, the guy agreed with me about a lot, but he was talking about the CIA and about choices in general, like how most people view making decisions. So how I've always made decisions were, it was just my moral compass. Like, I just have an internal code. There's certain things that I just wasn't ever going to do. Like, advancing myself to the detriment of others, stabbing somebody in the back, like scamming somebody to get myself money, just being dishonest in those ways. Like, I've done stuff against my moral code when it comes to like small stuff, like, you know, taking something that something small that like isn't mine, not like stealing it, but just small impulse stuff, like, but I'm talking like big fundamental things that when you make those decisions, you can't take them back. I never wanted to build myself up by stepping on anybody else's back. I've talked about that a bunch. But like it had nothing to do for me ever about like the probability of whether or not I can get away with something. Like the stuff that I've done that may not, but it may be easy to look and say like, oh, that's against your moral code. It wasn't really even against it. It was just like, I'm going to do this thing that I know the person's going to know that I did it, and then I'm going to admit that I did it and apologize. But at the end of the day, it's like a small thing that doesn't matter. Like, a lot of the stuff I go into it very well knowing, like, I'm not even trying to necessarily get away with it. It's like stealing somebody's, eating somebody's leftover food out of the fridge, and you know they're going to be mad about it, and it's not the right thing to do, but you're hungry and it looks good. Like even that, I would say a lot of people have done that to me. I haven't done it often, but like I've been selfish here and there and done that. Like I know I'm not going to get away with it, but it wasn't from a place of malice or anything. And it's just like, yeah, I'll deal with the consequences that come with somebody being mad at me for something like that. But what this guy was saying is for most people, like almost every decision that they make comes down to just a simple like risk, reward, probability of whether or not they're going to be able to get away with it without getting caught. Like I said, I played poker and stuff. It's like that's some sort of equation I would do knowing my hand and how it stacks up against what's on the table and like how much to bet, and if I don't have the best hand, should I bluff? Like from how this guy was talking, that's how most people make like moral decisions. It's has nothing to do with like who it's hurting or if it goes against your own moral code, which blew me away. I have to say, like, for this guy to say that he finds himself even doing that. But when he put it in that perspective, I guess it makes sense to me on some level. If that's what people were doing, if everybody thought they were just be able to always get away with doing this stuff to me, then it just ultimately, they just took the moral part out of it and how it would make me feel to be taken advantage of or backstabbed or cheated on. They just didn't think they were going to get caught, and they wanted more money, or they wanted to do the thing that they ultimately did. For whatever the reason is that they did it, it was just simple math for these people at a certain point. And I would imagine when you're looking at like all of the resources and the power and influence and money and their experience of how many times they've done this stuff and gotten away with it, knowing the inner workings of how to get away with this stuff. I guess when you put it in those terms, these people never expected that there was really any chance of them ever getting caught for doing this to me. Even if I did catch on and fight back, the probability of me ever having the stamina and the drive and the perseverance and the intelligence and trusting my intuition and all the things that ultimately I've shown that I have, the odds are still heavily stacked against me that I would ever be able to prove anything against this group. So, yeah, it just made me think a little bit about like how many people really do operate that way. Is that how, I don't know what the percentage is, like, are we talking in the 90-something percentile of people who just really take the integrity, values, morals out of the equation, and it just boils down to whether or not that they think that they can do it without it ever coming to light? Is that how all of this works? That this stuff just continues to happen because the more they get away with it and the more they know about the system and how to get away with it, there's no reason for anybody to stop, because they can continue to do it. And it's working for them, obviously. But that's a really depressing idea to think about. It's something that I feel desperately needs to change, because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that's how we're born. I don't think we come out of the womb and operate like that naturally. I think that's learned behavior. I think that's part of the conditioning and programming that people see how the game is played, and who's successful are the people playing the game that way. Like I said, I never realized that it was all a game until recently. That's not to say I didn't notice who advanced and who didn't, and who earned it and who didn't. Like, I mean, maybe I'm on my high horse again, but I would be willing to, whatever the job is, if I was invested in it and focused in it and put my all into it, I would say I would be up there, regardless of what it is, as somebody that is very good at that thing. On my own merit, I feel like I would advance and be an asset that would be used. But time and time again, it always seems like the people who cut corners and do things the wrong way are the ones who advance. But even with that, I wasn't willing to sway. But I was talking about that because he dove deeper into CIA and just about like for the quote unquote greater good that they all convinced. You know, it's all about getting intel on other people and not allowing other countries to get it on you, or getting blackmail on other people and not allowing yourself to get blackmailed, or whatever it may be. They talk about like CIA assets, or like the calculation of sacrificing one agent or a bunch of assets to go after more information that they deem is more important than like a human life. Like, this stuff exists. I've talked about it in business and stuff, about like the simplest thing is just like the Industrial Revolution and the railroads and all that stuff, with like just the simple calculation that they can save money, shut down the plant and put all the people out of business, and just a simple calculation that, like, at the end of the day, the calculation is I can make this thing for cheaper here, and the general population ultimately is going to still support my company regardless of how I treat the employees that used to work for me, that their sweat and blood built the company to what it was, made me rich. But I can cut them without thinking twice, as people will just go along with it as long as they save a couple of dollars on the product, it won't have, like, I won't get called out for being ruthless and heartless. People will still buy my product. Nobody will care. And I talked about like all the CIA mind control experiments and how foolish and naive it is for anybody to think that this stuff didn't have any findings that they're using against us to this day. They just keep changing the names of the operations, and even if the stuff comes out, oh, it was 20 years ago, nobody cares, and it's not like they're doing it anymore. Just completely blind to the fact that we're just allowing them to continuing to manipulate and do this stuff to us. And their calculation is we're never going to stop, because enough people are never going to care enough to make us stop. It's the fear and paranoia that, it happens in relationships and everything. I've talked about it in the psychology of like somebody who has abandonment issues and rejection issues. It's the fallacy of, well, I need to reject this person first or abandon this person before they just end up doing it to me first and hurting my feelings that I'm unwilling to address. So if it happens to me, I'm just going to be hurt and just continue to hurt other people. So you, not realizing you're hurting that other person who very well could have had no intention whatsoever to reject or abandon you. Just like, maybe it's naive to think, but I would like to think if people and countries could trust each other, but you have to build trust in order to trust, though. When trust repeatedly gets broken, then it's just a cycle of nobody ever trusting anybody. But I would like to think there's a point where we can get to where there is such a thing as mutual trust. And then you wouldn't have to spy on and get intel on somebody or another country, because you are actually on the same page and you are who you say you are and you are operating the way you say you are operating. You're not hiding anything, so it kind of becomes a waste of time even trying to dig up dirt on somebody who's not hiding anything. which comes full circle to my story and how I'm still even existing, how I'm still standing, is that I've always been who I said I was. And I legitimately trusted other people and didn't feel the need to have an arsenal of things I could use against them when I needed to. Not until one person after the next chose to break my trust in horrific ways, make up lies and say terrible things about me that didn't have any merit whatsoever, did I end up using things against these people. I didn't want to use anything against anybody. I don't focus on that stuff. It's no different whether you're talking about countries or people. Like the United States or all of the world powers that they're so invested with everybody else and what everybody else is doing, spending so much time, energy, and resources making up narratives that don't exist and trying to frame countries to be a certain way when they're not like that at all. Yet they're delusional. These same countries are delusional when they look in the mirror and talk about themselves. They somehow think they're superior or above. I don't know why. But maybe if we weren't always so concerned with everybody else, we could fix the problems that exist with our own country or within our own person, you know? I didn't even talk about any of the topics that I had planned on yet. And it's already almost an hour long. So, like I said, I'm not going to make this a hour-long video, but I'm going to end this segment. That was completely off the top of my head. Wasn't expecting to go that deep into the CIA and the decision-making process, but I think it's actually something that's very thought-provoking. I would be curious if people could honestly look at themselves and see if that's how they make their decisions, or if, like myself, they actually have some sort of moral compass that they follow. Not that I'm going to get any feedback on it, but I would be very interested in. But again, hard to trust anybody who's telling the truth, even if you say you are. People say a lot of things. Action that matters. But anyway, I'm going to end this segment. It is freezing out here and kind of rainy. I don't know if I'm going to talk more or just wrap it up for tonight. But yeah, I'm going to end it here so I don't make it too long. But yeah, whether or not I shoot more tonight, I'll post this one as soon as I get back, and definitely have a lot of material to talk about for anybody who actually finds my stuff interesting and useful. I'll be on quite a bit in the near future, so hope everybody has a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you guys soon. Love you all.